Meet Kurumine Asahi, otherwise known as the man who can't lie. After learning a massive secret that his crush is actually a vampire, can Asahi actually keep her secret? Asahi, who seemed anxious, ran around the campus, hastily trying to reach a room as thoughts filled his head along the way. He thought of secrets and was apparently building up the courage to confess to someone via a letter. He arrived by the door of the room, and steeling himself, he opened it. But rather than immediately confessing, a look of shock comes across Asahi's face as he and a green-haired girl lock eyes for a moment. Whatever he saw prompted him to shout for dear life. Well, as it turns out, Asahi is a bit of a saint in that he can't hold a secret, and he couldn't even tell a lie. Both facts are something the resident good guy's friends are delighted over. This led to Asahi acquiring the nickname Holy Basket. Despite this label that follows him around, Asahi's friends, Oka, Shima, and Sakura, comfort him that he's the most trustworthy person they know. Though to his credit, Asahi is proud of one simple thing. He's able to keep a secret, even if it's just one, and that secret is, he's in love with Yoko Shiragami, a mysterious girl who goes to school early and leaves after everyone else. Yoko doesn't mingle with others much, and during gym class, Asahi noticed that she sits by herself in the shade. After classes, Asahi and his friends hung out near the school grounds. To his surprise, his friends had in fact known of his secret crush to Shiragami, even stating that they knew it started in the fall of their first year in high school. This left the dejected Asahi on the bench to recognize he really is bad at keeping secrets. His supportive friends were quick to comfort him though, saying that it's no big deal to have a secret or two. The one piece of advice the three gave him, however, Oka specifically, was to push him to confess. And so he did. This brings us back to the first scene of the episode. Now, the reason as to why both Asahi and Yuko screamed bloody murder on that quiet afternoon when they saw each other was revealed. Yuko was a vampire, and Asahi saw her spreading her bat-like wings and her fangs. Yuko hastily retracted them and sheepishly asked a stunned Asahi if he saw them. As always, putting up a lie wasn't of any use to the main character, as his face revealed what he really thought. As all that was happening, Asahi's friends were still waiting for him at the school grounds. They discussed how he was gone for quite some time when suddenly, Akemi McCann, the school press, overheard them. Akemi had a reputation for being ruthless in the name of searching for a good story, to the point where she's labeled as the evil queen. She was looking for a scoop, and in order to save their hopeless romantic friend, Oka, Shima, and Sakura ran away from the evil school press. Back to the main characters of the story. Asahi was no longer reeling from shock from the sudden revelation. Yuko declared that now, since someone found out what she was, she has to leave school. She expressed her delight and amazement at how Asahi was the last person she'd get to talk to in school. And so, Asahi's confession of love has now turned into a promise. In order for Yuko to keep going to school, the Holy Basket vowed to do one thing he was known for not doing: keep that afternoon a secret. Asahi was ecstatic about the fact that finally he and Yuko were talking. They even started to go home together since they lived in the same neighborhood, something the teenage vampire was happy about. Although this is a dream come true for him, Asahi was still bothered that he couldn't confess. As they walked home, their class representative caught a glimpse of them together, and with her focus on Asahi specifically. The next day, Asahi got pestered by his friends about how his confession went. They all expected him to be rejected, but they couldn't understand it when Asahi said that they both became friends. Their time for conversation was cut short, however, as their teacher arrived late. This prompted their class representative, Aizawa Nagisa, a strict, academically inclined student, to respectfully reprimand their teacher of her tardiness. A lot of her classmates refer to her as the Iron Lady, but this Iron Lady has something on her mind that bothered her, as it seems. Before Asahi had taken a liking to Yuko, he was apparently staring at Aizawa a lot, and Aizawa, being the strict person that she is, confronted Mr. Holy Basket about this. She said that she has no interest in him, so he should stop staring. She advised Asahi to find someone else, and now presently, she said she's glad that he followed her advice. Well, saying it was one thing, but her expression said otherwise. Although she again confirmed that she doesn't have any feelings for Asahi, she wondered whether or not Asahi truly felt something for her in the past. She was even overthinking that since she didn't let him speak the last time she confronted him, she'll never know the answer to her question. Granted, Asahi was pretty crushed by the experience. What does Aizawa do with her confusion from their previous confrontation? Well, confront Asahi again, apparently. She cornered him in quite a crowded place and demanded whether or not he had feelings for her or not before. Of course, the Holy Basket couldn't lie, but was more or less surprised by this encounter, as he said yes. Seemingly relieved by his answer, Aizawa still didn't let Asahi off the hook though. She berated him, saying that she'd never fall for him when asked by Asahi's friends if this was her way of confessing. Now at the end of classes, Asahi accompanied Yuko for lunch, Since she couldn't eat around others without exposing her fangs, she waits until it's late in the afternoon, when there's no one around the classroom. Asahi was amazed by the way Yuko eats, which he noted was very different from how vampires are portrayed to feed. Yuko explained that sucking blood for vampires is actually akin to kissing, and that they do so during weddings and the like. All was well and good until Yuko decided to eat the snacks that Asahi unknowingly had on his person. Before he could warn her, she took a bite and was exclaiming moments later about how spicy the bread was. Upon closer inspection, the snacks were filled with random things, seemingly sabotaged by an unknown villain. By this time, Yuko was hanging from the roof of their classroom from how hot the snack was. Deciding it would be better to get some water, Asahi ran out to get some. But at the same time he opened the door, Aizawa was there as well, trying to enter the room at the same time. She saw Yuko with her wings out, making the three unsure about what to do next. The biggest surprise came from Aizawa, however, as suddenly, mechanical sounds emanated from her body and a small port opened from the back of her head where a tiny humanoid alien version of the class representative came out, demanding to know which planet Yuko was from. With another otherworldly secret in the presence of Asahi, the now revealed to be alien Aizawa suggested wiping his memory by means of an advanced alien tool, which was actually just a hammer. Although he resisted at first, Asahi allowed Aizawa to wipe his memory when the latter mentioned it would benefit Yuko. The teenage vampire stopped the both of them, however, stating that she is glad to have a person who knows what she is, and would accept whatever outcome that would lead to. Upon seeing the bond those two had made, Aizawa decided to entrust her secret to Asahi as well. While walking to school, Asahi contemplated the current situation he's gotten himself into. Not only is he keeping a secret for Yuko, now he knows that the class representative, Aizawa, is an alien. He thought that for a guy who is known as a bad liar, he must try his hardest to keep not one, but two life-altering secrets. His concentration on his thoughts was broken when he heard a noise coming from the back of a school building. He sneaks in only to see his three friends essentially being held captive by Akemi. All three were tied and hung with hoses wrapped around them. Apparently, the evil queen has yet to give up the scoop she heard about Asahi. It was a good commitment towards their friendship that Sakura, Oka, and Shima had not cracked yet, despite their current predicament. Though trying to keep himself quiet, Akemi noticed Asahi nonetheless. She had already gotten a recording of Asahi and Yuko talking, and she revealed that the sabotage snacks from earlier was her doing. Urging her childhood friend to spill the beans, as it were, she seemed determined to find out what is really going on between her target couple. Apparently, both Asahi and Akemi were classmates since elementary, and since then the unfortunate do-gooder has been on the front pages of the Evil Queen's school paper. Asahi pointed out that he has no intention to help Akemi with this scoop since those papers made his school life a living hell. And so, the only logical next move that came across the mind of Akemi was to chase and catch Asahi to make him confess. After quite the chase, the holy basket got caught. He was tied and strung up the same way as his friends earlier. All the while, Akemi laughed menacingly. Asahi proved to be a tough nut to crack, and so, in order to put additional pressure on him, Akemi decides to ask the other half of this mysterious couple, Yuko. Troubled by this, Asahi quickly got himself out of the binds, rushed to the classroom, only to notice that both Akemi and Yuko were not there. He suddenly remembered that there was a possibility that Yuko would leave school because of her secret being found out. This led him to asking the teacher where she was. Turns out the teenage vampire was just sick, and since he was the one who expressed concern over her, the teacher assigned Asahi to hand over some notes to Yuko at her house. This job got Asahi both excited and nervous. He wasn't the only one to be excited, however, as Akemi was listening about the whole thing outside of the classroom door. After Asahi got out of class, Akemi chased him again. He was losing hope until Aizawa pulled him into the bushes with her in order to hide from the crazy school journalist. Her blushed expression seemed to indicate that she was feeling something for the main character, although she denied it to herself heavily. Both haven't had the time to regroup and think about their next move, however, as Akemi found them all the same. Class representative stepped forward in order to stop the evil queen, and ordered Asahi to rush and go do his mission. Not one for missed chances, he dashed off, away from the troubles that Akemi brings. After quite some time, Asahi arrived at Yuko's dorm. It was quite obvious since there were bats circling the place. The resident teenage vampire was glad of her visitor, and was feeling better enough to clean her entire room, something Asahi pointed out, though she admitted that all the stuff she cleaned was just stuffed in her apartment closet, which looked ready to burst. He also sheepishly noted that her room looked pretty much normal, and asked if she sleeps in a coffin. According to Yuko, having a coffin bed was a luxury, something she couldn't afford. Asahi was lost in his own thoughts, as it seemed, because he now only recognized how he's spending time with the girl he likes inside of her own home. He didn't have a chance to dwell on this thought, however, as he got a call from Aizawa that Akemi was on her way to essentially spy on them. All worked out alright though, as when Akemi tried to sneak into Yuko's apartment, the closet exploded on her, knocking her out in the process. It doesn't mean that the evil queen gave up though, as the next morning she was back at it again. This time, she was blackmailing Asahi with an edited photo of him and Yuko, but with some advice from Oka, Asahi managed to fake his enthusiasm about the paper's publishing, much to Akemi's annoyance. Since she couldn't print something that gives Asahi joy, she decided not to publish the photo. Although all was well and good, Asahi noted that it seemed Akemi was holding something back. It is then revealed that the glasses that Akemi wears was possessed by the god of fortune, Fuku-chan. The god mentioned something to the school journalist about making her childhood dreams come true. Akemi refused, saying that things are fine the way they are between her and Asahi. A normal school day fills the first scene of the episode. The teacher made rounds around the classroom, intent on teaching English to the students. Mischief is not far off from high school students as it seemed, as Shima decided to slip in some magazines and read them in class, using his English textbook to cover it up. This does not slip past the teacher though, and she promptly grabbed the magazine from Shima. His friend decided to blame it on Asahi, which garnered some response from the class, seeing it was an indecent type of magazine. The teacher called Aizawa to reprimand her classmates, but as both Asahi and Shima were bracing for a big scolding, they looked to see that the class representative's desk was empty. This surprised the teacher too, as she still had her things at her table, yet made no mention of her absence. She continued the class nonetheless, and Asahi was left to ponder about the unusual disappearance of the Iron Lady. That is, until he felt something hit the back of his head. He looked down, and to his surprise, the tiny alien Aizawa was there, waving at him from the floor. As it turns out, the robot unit that Aizawa uses to pass off as human ran out of power, and she hadn't had the chance to recharge it. He had no choice but to help, and after excusing himself from class, the pair snuck out into the hallway. When asked as to why she didn't have the time to recharge her unit, Aizawa blushingly admitted that she panicked when she thought Asahi and Yuko were talking about indecent stuff. Anyway, the two make their way towards the girls' bathroom. Of course, Asahi was hesitant to enter, but in order to help this tiny alien friend, he did so. He found Asahi's human unit at the end of the bathroom stalls and proceeded to carry it out into the hallway. The tiny Aizawa noted how it looked like he was carrying her for real, though she blushingly dispersed that thought away. This time, they encountered Yuko in the hallway, who agreed to help with their situation. Together, the three made their way to the infirmary, and when they made sure that it was empty, they laid the unit down on the bed and recharged Aizawa's human body there. With their problem now solved, the tiny alien offered to scout the area ahead, so Asahi and Yuko wouldn't raise suspicion about coming from an empty room together. The pair waited inside until they heard some commotion just seconds after tiny Aizawa left. Rushing outside, they saw that Akemi had found the tiny alien, who now had no choice but to pretend to be an action figure. The school journalist was more curious than most, however, and examined the supposed figure closely. She even wondered whether this was one of the reported 7 wonders of their school. These wonders were apparently mysterious figures that inhabit the school, with members including a fairy and an after-school vampire. Back to the situation at hand, which now had gotten worse since Shima had arrived, Asahi had no choice but to lie that he made that figure so that he could fantasize about their class representative. And so, he got chased around the campus for that. By Akemi, who couldn't believe his perverted nature, by Shima, who wanted to have a doll like that made but with certain modifications, and by Yuko, who inexplicably believed Asahi when he said he was a pervert. The retreating unlikely hero hid in the storage room with the small alien hidden in his pocket. While the two discussed how they could get away from their situation, a mysterious figure is revealed to have been observing the situation, indicating that she is part of the 7 wonders, and that the school rumors hold more truth than it is given credit for. This one had a pair of horns, and remarked to herself she'd like to make things interesting. She twisted her horn, and this resulted in the tiny alien Aizawa to grow into human proportions. Delighted by the sudden turn of events, both Asahi and Aizawa hatched a brilliant plan that took all attention away from the alien. As the holy basket was being mocked and bothered by both Akemi and Shima, Aizawa made her escape. She thanks Asahi silently, and as the situation dies down, the horned mysterious figure shrinks her down to her original size. Now with everything back to normal, Asahi and Yuko cleared the misunderstanding earlier as they walked home together. Aizawa observed them from afar, and though she says she's happy that they're now okay, she admits to feeling a dreadful emotion unfamiliar to her. Rainy conditions seemed to dominate the weather on this particular day. Asahi absent-mindedly walked to school with his umbrella until he ran into Yuko. This was a surprise for the main character, as usually the teenage vampire would head to school during the early hours of the morning. When asked about it, Yuko said that she doesn't need to worry about it since the sun only gives her a dark tan, and the weather hides any sunlight for that day anyway. Though really she just overslept, hence her going to school later than she usually does. Settling for the weather forecast didn't prove fruitful, however, as moments after the sky cleared up. This meant that Yuko went to school with a tan that made her look like she had just went to the beach. Aizawa, ever the strict friend, reminded the innocent vampire that she should be more careful since it was too suspicious when she changed skin color in an instant. Though Yuko reassured both Asahi and Aizawa that the tan would disappear after a good night's sleep, the class representative determined it wouldn't be enough. After briefly mentioning her training back at her alien world, and with Yuko's enthusiastic response to it, Aizawa suggested that she should train the vampire instead. And so, for the first time, Yuko wore her gym uniform and was active around the field. And although Asahi wasn't much help during the training, he was happy because he finally got to see Yuko being active and not sulking in the corner. The training actually just consisted of ways to avoid the sunlight, but lasted the entire day. The next morning, both Asahi and Aizawa encountered a much lively Yuko out and about, with the sun shining brightly ahead. She had learned how to expertly travel using the shadows, and not once during their commute did she get tanned skin. All that ended though when they arrived at a bridge with no shaded parts. The three contemplated how Yuko could travel during the day, but in the end, the vampire gave up and just let herself get tanned. The group had a gloomy vibe to them, that is, until Asahi mentioned sunscreen. Aizawa said that Yuko must have tried it because it would be too stupid to not have. The teenage vampire got embarrassingly declared that she had. And sure enough, the next day they saw her in the sun with no problems whatsoever. Apparently, after all that trouble, the thought of using sunscreen never crossed Yuko's mind. Afterwards, Asahi got an invite from Yuko to meet at an amusement park. Although the vampire had invited Aizawa as well, the latter didn't show, as apparently she wanted Asahi and Yuko to spend time together alone. She felt the slightest pang of jealousy, but she didn't admit it. And so, the pair had a grand time at the park. Yuko had a liking for thrilling rides, so they rode a lot of roller coasters. They even entered a haunted house, but the vampire was the one who was more visibly shaken than her companion. Through their time spent together, Asahi learned that Yuko was a half-vampire, half-human. Her father was a vampire, and he fell in love with a human woman. Yuko's parents were actually in a similar situation as Asahi's and Yuko's. They were going to the same high school, and they kept her father's identity a secret. And eventually, they fell in love. They even went on multiple dates in the very same amusement park. Realizing that she had basically described the situation that both she and Asahi were in now, the pair blushed with embarrassment and went into an awkward mode. Since they were on the topic of people close to Yuko, she mentioned that she had a Wolfman childhood friend, likening it to Asahi and Akimi's connection to each other. The scene then changes to the Shiragami house, where Yuko's father had given the order to check up on his daughter at school to the very same Wolfman that was the topic of the pair's conversation. The episode picks up where it left off from the last one, with Asahi and Yuko leaving the amusement park where they spend almost the entire day together. Asahi was still reminiscing about the multiple information he received from Yuko throughout the day, and was particularly stuck on the fact about her Wolfman childhood friend. And as fate would have it, they encountered that same Wolfman as they were walking home. Both the mystery Wolfman and Yuko referred to each other on a first-name basis. The vampire called this newcomer Shiro, and Asahi rightfully assumed that this must be the male childhood friend they were talking about earlier. Shiro had an incredibly harsh attitude, akin to a delinquent. First only talking to Yuko, he got mad when he noticed Asahi staring at him. He grabbed the shy protagonist by the collar and tried to demand what he was doing. His demeanor changed when he figured out that both Asahi and Yuko were together from the amusement park. He immediately turned his back, and with a sad expression on his face, he wished Asahi the best of luck, seemingly concluding that the two were a couple. Upon seeing the dejected face of Shiro, Asahi felt the need to explain the situation, that he and Yuko were friends. The incredibly oblivious vampire picked up on what he was trying to say, so she emphasized that they were only friends with no chance of a relationship happening. Although this was his goal, Asahi still got hurt and reeled from Yuko's words. With all the confusion cleared up, Shiro continued his stern assessment of the two from before. He correctly assumed that Asahi knew of her secret since he wasn't scared when he saw Shiro's fangs. This meant Asahi was aware of the existence of supernatural beings. As per her father's request, Shiro now has to take Yuko back and end her school life. In a desperate attempt to prevent that, Asahi pretended to not know anything. He even feigned ignorance to Shiro's fangs, and so began a series of bluff callings between the two of them, with Shiro slipping up saying that he was a Wolfman, and with Asahi not even making a hard-to-read face, the constant bluffing went on and on. until both looked at the sky for the moon in order to prove whether Shiro was actually a wolfman or not. And wouldn't you know it, the afternoon was late enough for the moon to show. Transformation didn't go how Asahi expected it to go, however. He was expecting a huge hybrid between man and wolf when actually, the transformation turned Shiro into a woman. But this one didn't have the same personality, or even the same consciousness as Shiro. She introduced herself as Shishido Shiho, and for lack of a better word, a self-admitted pervert. Meanwhile, Aizawa had started to feel guilty about not accepting Yuko's invitation to the amusement park. She decided to bake her a cake and personally give it to her. Actually, it was more of an unconscious front to hide her true feelings. She was overthinking about the time Asahi and Yuko had spent together, and although it was her plan to get them to start a relationship, she couldn't help but express this uncomfortable feeling she kept on getting. While all that was happening, Asahi, Shiho, and Yuko all made their way back to the latter's apartment. Shiho revealed that she was the main personality and that she was always conscious in the body whenever Shiro was in control, but the latter isn't when she takes over. The overtly sexy wolf woman stated that in order for them to switch places, the personality in control would have to look at the moon. She also displays her perverted nature, much to Yuko's discomfort, though Shiho seems to be teasing Asahi because she noticed something in Yuko. The moment the apartment got rowdy due to Shiho's antics was the exact time Aizawa entered in order to give her homemade cake. When she saw Shiho on top of Asahi, she thought that they were fooling around and left immediately. In order to stop the wolf woman's behavior, Yuko made her look at a picture of a moon, prompting her to change into Shiro. Unfortunately, Aizawa returned to apologize, but when she saw that this time a guy was on top of Asahi, it added to her confusion more, so she just ran out again. Finally, he was changed back to Shiho again. She went to confirm something about Yuko's feelings and deemed her too oblivious to notice other people's as well her own emotions. She left of her own accord, saying that she wasn't the one tasked to bring Yuko back. The three thought that they had seen the last of Shiho, but during the next day, their class received a transferee, who was none other than the wolf woman herself. The new transferee became the talk of the school, but not because she was a new face, but because of her lewd behavior. It seems to be reserved for whenever teasing Asahi was possible, however, as no matter how much Shima tried to persuade Shiho, she seemed to only give attention to the protagonist, a fact that greatly bothered the class representative. Aizawa reprimanded Shiho greatly, though apparently she's only hiding her jealousy about how it seemed Asahi never felt anything remotely close to what he displayed with Shiho and when the class rep and he were together. Suddenly, not being able to handle the pressure, Asahi took off. Finally, finding solitude in one of the halls, he reminisced about his recent fortune, or perhaps misfortune. In a span of a few months, his life drastically changed. Before he was someone no one even trusted to be confidential, and now he has secrets to keep for a vampire, an alien, and now a wolf woman. Yuko found him a little while later, and while they were talking, Asahi couldn't help but think to himself that he wouldn't be surprised if another creature came about in his life again. And as if fate had heard him, the pair saw a girl with horns and pink hair casually stroll about in the hallway. Though it was more fair to say that they were more surprised that she was not at all trying to hide her horns to fit in rather than the appearance of another otherworldly being. This is the same creature that was able to change Aizawa's size a few episodes prior to this one. The pair approached this mysterious newcomer. She introduced herself as Komoto Akane. Akane had a lot of powers, credited to her being a demon, though she talked in a soft, innocent manner at first. In order to mess with Asahi further, she casted an illusion wherein her horns were detachable, making her seem human. If there was one noteworthy thing about Akane's name, it was that she had the same last name as their homeroom teacher. This is something Asahi noted on, and when asked about it, Akane said that they were sisters. Having her fill, Akane walked away from the conversation with a mischievous smile on her face until she bumped into Komodo-sensei. The adult lifted the smaller demon by the horns, and she was forced to reveal the truth. Akane is actually a 1,000-year-old demon, and rather than being her younger sister, she was Komodo-sensei's great-grandmother. What's more, she was actually the dean of the school. The demon tried to intimidate the protagonist with her identity being revealed and all that. Unfortunately for her, Asahi was at this point sort of immune to discovering such things. If one would consider what he went through, finding out that there was another creature living in his school doesn't seem the least bit surprising. Yoko, on the other hand, wasn't bothered because she tended to treat that demon dean as a child due to the latter's youthful and childish appearance. Even though Akane seemed to quite enjoy things that a grade schooler would enjoy, like prizes and candies and such, she got extremely mad that she was being treated immaturely, and by an innocent, immature vampire at that. The tension resulted in the two having a contest to determine who was more mature and who was the most adult out of them. Who was the unwilling audience for such a contest between a demon and a vampire? Asahi, of course. who is now tied to a chair. One good thing came out from the entire debacle, however, when Asahi got praised by their homeroom teacher about his integrity and success in keeping Yoko's secret for her benefit. Too bad that the moment got ruined with an explosion, courtesy of both the two competitors clashing energy. Now with everybody a little calmed down and with the cost of one gym, everyone went their separate ways. Asahi got called to the teacher's office during the morning. He had been absent during cooking class and had been assigned to a supplementary lesson. At first, he wasn't enthusiastic about taking a class alone, but teacher Akari revealed that he wasn't the only one who was required to retake cooking classes. The class is also composed of Aizawa, Shiho, and surprisingly, Yuko. With that, Asahi no longer felt that he had anything against complementary classes. He, however, remarked that it was surprising for Yuko to be there since she prepared her lunch every day. Apparently, all three girls had cooked very bad dishes the last time, which is why they're taking the supplementary class. For this one, they were tasked to cook curry. As per usual, Aizawa took the reins. She had already prepared a list of ingredients, and with her skill set of following a predetermined set of rules, everyone had complete confidence in the class rep to cook the curry confidently. But as luck would have it, even though she followed the recipe to the letter, she managed to bake a chocolate cake, and it was a delicious one too, because when it was thrown out the window, it fell to a passing Akane. The taste of Aizawa's chocolate cake was so immaculate that the demon principal started to crave for more. Not to be deterred by the unfortunate turn of events from Aizawa's cooking, the group now decided to cook as one, with each person contributing something to the dish. Well, some more than most, as Shiho doesn't and couldn't cook. The final product didn't actually look that bad. The dish truly looked like curry, and was a testament to the fine job that the group had done. Unfortunately, Aizawa was still saddened by the blunder she had made earlier. In order to cheer her up, Yuko decided to let her spice up the final ingredient, the roe. Sensing it was a bad idea, both Asahi and Shiho tried to stop the other two from doing so, as it could ruin the dish that only needed one simple thing to be perfect. The only problem was, the vampire and the alien already had their minds set, and so, they could only wait for a good result, or a disaster. And disaster it was that arrived. Akari-sensei went to check up on the curry, along with Akane. Because the teacher was assigned to eat the dish, she came upon a scene straight out of a horror movie. Both Asahi and Shiho were knocked out from the smell of Yuko's and Aizawa's concoction. The teacher immediately concluded that whatever the students had cooked was not fit for human consumption, and so they decided not to go anywhere near it. Apparently, the chocolate cake made such a huge impact on Akane, more than previously thought. That night, she was raging in Akari's apartment trying to get her great-granddaughter to make Aizawa bake the cake again. At this point, half of the teacher's apartment was destroyed, and when she refused Akane's request again, the little demon declared that she would destroy the earth. The next morning, Akari-sensei urgently called the girls to the cooking classroom and ordered them to make the chocolate cake they did the last time, saying that the fate of the planet rested on it. Asked what she meant, the teacher revealed that Akane had manipulated an asteroid using her demon powers and made it head straight for Earth. Aizawa, Yuko, and Shiho got to work immediately, though the vampire and the wolf woman wondered why they were there since they were terrible cooks. Turns out, Akari-sensei had a plan. She wanted to give Akane disgusting food so that she'll pass out, and thereby losing her concentration and making the asteroid miss the planet. It was far better than giving the demon what she wanted, and her plan worked to perfection, as Aizawa doesn't trust the quality of the chocolate she made enough to save the world. And so, the world's most important game of chicken followed, disgusting foods against the pride of a demon. Another lucky wild card came in support of the teacher's plan, too. Akimi, who was led into a wild goose chase by Akane, because the former correctly assumed the latter was the rumored phantom horned lady of the school's 7 wonders, gladly helped out. The rest of the world were oblivious to this battle, though, and the same can be said of Asahi. When he heard the asteroid was close, he thought of Yuko and rushed to where she was. At the same time, the asteroid inexplicably changed its route. When the protagonist opened the door, he saw the entire group plus Akimi knocked out for some random reason. It's nearing summer and the school year is almost at an end. Asahi and Oka were talking about how things recently turned out between the former and his school crush. Oka mentioned that after all that time, his friend never tried to confess again. He urged the shy Asahi to do so again, or even just ask Yuko to the pool. The timing was perfect, and they'd get a little fun out of it too. As luck would have it, Yuko got out of the classroom as their conversation ended. Remarking that he wasn't the same as he was all those months ago, Asahi approached the teenage vampire, determined to finally ask her out. But of course, he did so in a very sloppy way. Yuko got the idea that he was only inviting her to practice swimming since both of them weren't good swimmers. she invited Shiho and Aizawa to be their instructors, and from then on, all three of Asahi's friends were invited as well. Even though the supposed pool date had turned into a pool outing for the entire friend group, Asahi was still happy with what he got. The next day, the group had embarked on their pool outing already. The boys and girls arrived separately, but had met up by the edge of the pool. As per their initial goal, Shiho and Aizawa became co-instructors in teaching Asahi and Yuko to swim, although one was more effective than the other. Shiho's plans for teaching only contained lewd methods. It had inadvertently gotten Shima in trouble for it, who, despite already knowing how to swim, was Shiho's most active student. When the wolf woman tried to demonstrate her lewd tactic number 2 on Aizawa, the alien promptly knocked her out, and so the handling for the swimming training solely became the Iron Lady's priority. Asahi and Yuko were good students, all things considered. However, Aizawa's teachings were prematurely stopped when she unconsciously touched Asahi while swimming, leading her to blush profusely. Yuko, ever the oblivious vampire when it came to love, teased the two about it, and this led to Aizawa almost drowning Asahi in protest. Feeling guilty about what she had done, she ordered the two to just practice with the other as their partner. As the others observed how comfortable the two protagonists looked with each other, they thought about how Asahi used to fall in love with girls that wanted nothing to do with him. This time, they wondered whether or not he was finally in love with the right one. Time passes by quickly when you're having fun, and so before they knew it, the pool reached closing time. Asahi and Yuko were the last ones in the pool, and before they left, the vampire whispered something to Asahi. The group seemed to notice that the two were in a rush to go home and noted that it was suspicious how awkward they each made their excuses separately. It turns out Yuko had asked Asahi to meet her at the school at night. Thoughts filled his head as he walked to school about what it could be. But Yuko had just wanted to continue practicing swimming and had invited Asahi to sneak into the school pool. She seemed to know a certain passageway through the fence, and before long, the two had their toes dipped in the pool. There, they were uninterrupted in their practice, and Yuko was even comfortable enough to show her wings and fangs since it was only Asahi there. After a while, they took a break, and Asahi used this opportunity to ask why she knew where a hole was in the fence that led to the pool. The vampire admitted that it was her mother that told her about it, as like them, her parents weren't good swimmers too. They used to sneak into the pool and practice by themselves as well. Yuko noted that before she met Asahi, she did not experience the fun school life her mother kept telling her about, and so she was very thankful for the many friends she had now. As all that was happening, Akane observed the two trespassers using her powers. She remarked to herself about how this scene felt familiar. She remembered how Yuko's parents used to do the same thing when she was still a teacher. Demon Principal mused to herself about what kind of love story would Yuko show her. The episode starts with Asahi inviting Yuko to eat out with friends. There was a new cake shop that opened near the school and they wanted to go together. Although she wanted to, Yuko refused, as it would be very hard to hide her fangs when eating, and especially so if they're going with people that don't know that she's a vampire. That is, until her stomach made a loud growling sound that even Asahi could hear. And so, after careful consideration, Yuko agreed to accompany them. Their small hangout didn't go with problems, however. Asahi had to keep himself alert whenever Yuko got too excited. She was too lenient with showing her wings, so he took it upon himself to both distract their friends and remind the silly vampire whenever she'd made a blunder. It didn't go without unexpected visits, too. Akimi was, in fact, a worker for the cake shop, and she had encountered the group on that particular day. She wasn't her usual evil self, though, as she only came over to inform Yuko that she had finished another batch of treats that she had eaten before. Not wanting to have a repeat of the event that led to the class representative finding out Yuko's secret, Asahi decided to eat the entire batch himself, but Shima also helped. The final string of trouble that sprouted from this event was that in another booth, Akane had noticed Akimi and her connection to her talking glasses. An evil smile filled her face as a wicked idea came across her mind. The next day, Akimi was frantically running around the school. When Asahi and Yuko intercepted her, they found out that she wasn't wearing her trademark glasses. Apparently, she had lost them, but can't remember where she placed them. When asked why she couldn't just go through the day without them since it wasn't prescription glasses, Akimi reminisced about a childhood memory. It had been Asahi who gave her the glasses, and it implied that the evil queen had felt something much more deep than friendship with Asahi, which is why she couldn't just leave her glasses. Akimi then spent the entire day searching for them and had even briefly encountered Shiho, who was in a search for her inexplicably lost underwear. After that short and weird encounter, the distraught school journalist was intercepted by Aizawa. The class representative helped the former with her search and said that her reason for doing so was because both Asahi and Yuko informed her of the situation and were searching for them as well. She couldn't believe the turn of events that occurred. but Akimi's trail of thought was broken by the sudden appearance of Akane. The demon principal appeared to taunt them, as she revealed she was the one who took the glasses and even had worn them just for extra kicks. This resulted in another chase around the campus, with Asahi eventually joining the effort as well. After quite the long struggle and a funny sequence wherein Asahi had inadvertently helped Akane with her tricks, the chase finally ended when Akari-sensei learned of what her demon great-grandmother was doing. Needless to say, she made her give the glasses back. Asahi went to inform Yuko that their search was over, and while doing so, Akimi's secret about her glasses was revealed to Aizawa. The class representative couldn't believe that Akimi had possessed an object that was inhabited by a god of fortune, but nonetheless, Akimi had told her of it, as well as the origin for the glasses. Aizawa has deducted that Akimi had feelings for her childhood friend, and that Fuku-chan, the god of fortune inside the glasses, was trying to get the journalist to admit her feelings. And as fate would have it, or just perhaps with the power of Fuku-chan, Asahi and Yuko made their way to where Aizawa and Akimi were. The glasses then served an ultimatum. If Akimi couldn't face Asahi without her glasses, and if she wore them in front of him, Fuku-chan would confess for her, and so followed a series of events wherein Aizawa was trying to distract the protagonists because Akimi's glasses were acting up, and Asahi trying to distract all of them because Yuko's vampire characteristics showed up again. In a last-ditch effort, Aizawa stole the glasses and wore them herself, but without thinking, the glasses thought she was Akimi and proceeded to confess to Asahi, making it sound that it was the class representative that professed her love to the shocked protagonist. The summer festival is here, and the group decided to visit the festival stalls together. But unbeknownst to both Asahi and Aizawa, that was just a ploy concocted by Yuko herself in order to get them to spend time with each other. Perhaps spurred on by the confession the class representative made earlier, the vampire vowed to support their relationship wholeheartedly. She decided to spy on the two as they go along this very unplanned date. Shiho, who is accompanying Yuko, comments on the incredibly dense, oblivious nature of her vampiric friend. Meanwhile, Aizawa contemplated going home since only two of them showed up. But Asahi, upon seeing how excited the class rep was for the festival, with her wearing a yukata and all, decided to explore the festival with her so that she wouldn't be disappointed. Besides, he correctly assumed Yuko was there somewhere. Being an alien, Aizawa had no clue about how humans celebrate their festivals, which is partly why she was excited anyways. Though it was a little awkward between the two of them because of Akimi's glasses, Fuku-chan's confession, they were able to enjoy the time they spent together at Asahi's insistence. He had made it a point to allow Aizawa the entire festivities for her to enjoy. Some attractions at the festival were familiar to Asahi's alien companion. For instance, she had taken notice about the toy guns one uses on a festival to shoot down objects for a prize, likening it to her combat training back at her home planet. She was, however, unfamiliar at how strict and downright unfair some of the games here were during festivals. But despite it all, the pair managed to win a giant stuffed bear toy, which they promptly exchanged for the young girl who was admiring it for a single roll of cotton candy. And still, the vampire and the wolf woman were still hot on their tails throughout all of it. Again, Shiho pointed out that Yuko must be feeling something other than being proud when she looked at how Asahi and Aizawa were having fun. The former noticed the sad smile on the latter's face, but in their conversation, they lost track of where their target pair had gone. Turns out, the two just went for ice cream. Aizawa felt that it was becoming too much of a date, and while blushing, loudly suggested that they go look for Yuko and the others if they really were there. Coincidence is a reoccurring theme for this anime, as right after the class representative had just said that, Yuko appeared at the far end of the stall to get some ice cream herself. Although her cover got blown, the vampire still decided to run away, and so ensued another chase between Asahi, Aizawa, and Yuko. Unlike the previous ones, this one was short, because as they rounded a corner, Aizawa tripped, and unfortunately, she was the one holding the ice cream they just got. Asahi noticed just in time, but didn't anticipate her landing in such an awkward way with the ice creams in tow. She landed on top of him, with the ice creams falling on each of Asahi's eyes. Must have been one cold moment for Asahi. Aizawa wasn't better off, as her hair got stuck in the buttons of Asahi's shirt, though for some reason the only thought that crossed the class representative's mind at that moment was her finally admitting her feelings for Asahi. For a brief moment, she snuggled closer and hugged him. Yuko, on the other hand, had seen all of that unfold. Although this was her plan and technically she succeeded, she couldn't help but feel her chest tightening from seeing somebody else hug Asahi. The next morning, Aizawa couldn't bear to hold eye contact with the protagonist, and she left as quickly as she could after classes. This left Asahi bewildered as to what was happening, but actually, she wasn't the only one feeling out of it that day. As Asahi looked over Yuko's desk, she wasn't there herself. Apparently, she was absent-mindedly spacing out in class that Akari-sensei saw fit to accompany her to the principal's office to figure out what was wrong. Akane tried insulting her, but it didn't work. Yuko only snapped out of it when the demon principal made a comment about Asahi being Yuko's man. Akane deduced that Yuko couldn't recognize her own feelings and is why she was blanking out at times. Not one to give her victims an excuse, Akane proceeded to essentially torture Yuko by morphing into Asahi. This went on for the greater part of the afternoon and only stopped when Akari-sensei arrived just in time to scold the horned demon principal. The words of Akane's illusion still ring in the vampire's ears. Later on during the day, Asahi had time to say something, perhaps something intimate to Yuko. However, she immediately closed that opportunity, saying that she was rushing home since both she and Shiho made plans. She turned her back and wrestled with the feelings in her heart that she couldn't understand. A dejected Asahi, more sad than normal, slumped forward on his desk. His friends noticed his sad demeanor as of late, and Oka correctly assumed that it was because of Yuko. Apparently, ever since the events of the summer festival, the vampire had been distant, not being her usual bubbly self when with Asahi. In fact, she stopped going with him altogether and doesn't even look him in the eye. No matter how hard Asahi tried, it just seemed that Yuko doesn't want anything to do with him as of the moment. Asahi's friend advised him to at least offer to walk Yuko home in order to clear the misunderstanding. He wasn't the only one being concerned with the sudden drifting apart between him and Yuko. Aizawa holds herself to blame for that happening, as she knew it all started with that debacle last summer festival. She was so lost in thought, both from chastising herself for letting it happen and from figuring out a way to bring the two shy lovers together, that she didn't even notice Akane in the hallway. Thinking of another way to cause mischief, the demon principal offered Aizawa a deal since she could grant people's wishes through her powers. She even teased her about a photo of Aizawa and Asahi that night during the festival. The blackmailing was stopped, quite thankfully at that, by Akari-sensei. She arrived just in time to pick up the cranky demon, but she left the photo. The cheeky class representative intended to keep the photo herself until she was cornered in the hallway by Asahi and his friends, and by Akimi. A scuffle ensued, one that started by Aizawa denying the existence of the photo, that ended up with Asahi having ice cream in his eyes again for some reason. While the others tried to figure out why their strict class rep had such a photo, the Iron Lady lived up to her nickname by swallowing both her pride and the photo. But unfortunately for every party involved in the complicated love that exists between Asahi and Yuko, the situation put it in an even worse situation than it was before. A blinded Asahi accidentally pinned Aizawa against the wall, but from the back, it seemed as if they were a couple doing couple things. Coincidence strikes again as Yuko, who had the same thought as Asahi to walk home together, saw what was happening. She incorrectly assumed that Asahi wanted to go with Aizawa and left accordingly. That night, Asahi had a dream so vivid it scared the living hell out of him. He dreamed that Yuko had invited her to the rooftop to talk. She had gotten her secret found out by her dad, and she had to leave the school. The dream was so startling for him that he woke up in a cold sweat. The weather the next day was as gloomy as it had been in Asahi's dream. Nonetheless, it did not stop him from approaching Yuko in order to clear the air between them as they were walking to school. Not having much to say, Yuko instead suggested that they meet at the rooftop after class. Asahi's friends, when they heard of this invitation, thought Yuko was finally going to confess her feelings. They urged Asahi, who was determined to go, to confess first, so that he would not feel as bad if Yuko wasn't there to confess in the first place. A focused Asahi dashed across the campus and had likened this experience with the one he had before when he first planned to confess to Yuko, which led down to the series of events until today. The only difference this time is that he is determined to give his confession letter to a patiently waiting Yuko on the rooftops. Before he could go up any further, he encountered Aizawa on the stairs. When asked why she was standing there, the class rep admitted that she cannot let him confess, and with a shovel tried to knock a bewildered Asahi out in order to incapacitate him. He climbed the pile of chairs and tables the alien class rep had set up against the entrance to the rooftops. Moments later, he emerged out the doorway, but much to his shock, Yuko was being clutched by a large bat-like creature. She only had time to say sorry and goodbye before it took off. Yuko wasn't waiting for a confession. She was waiting to say goodbye. Rain started to pour when Aizawa joined Asahi on the rooftop. Without a speck of sadness in his eyes, he asks help from his class rep to get Yuko back. Without skipping a beat, Asahi and company immediately started to formulate a plan to rescue Yuko. The would-be rescuers included the sensei, Asahi, Akane, Shiho, and Aizawa. When all that was set, they made their way to her place using Akari-sensei's car. The teacher was actually proud of her new vehicle, saying it cost her a lot of self-control to not waste whatever she had on beer in order to save up on it. The car didn't last that long though, as when Asahi wished for them to get there before nighttime, Akane's magic caused the car to speed through, damaging the vehicle in irreversible ways. The sensei had to be knocked out for that to happen though, and when she woke up and saw the state her brand new car was in, she immediately blamed Akane, and the former chased the latter while brandishing a wooden sword. And so, the rescue mission had only 3 members left. Ayasawa took the leader role when it came to the mission, but before they embarked on their quest, she expressed her apology to Asahi for the night Yuko was taken. She was sorry for acting selfish, but Asahi, ever the kind-hearted guy, did not hold any grudges, just smiled and just thanked her for helping. The 3 unlikely rescuers sneaked past the gate and the front door of the Shiragami household. They had successfully infiltrated the house and didn't encounter anything out of the ordinary. That is, until they heard a thudding sound growing closer and closer. A giant male vampire appeared from the shadows, demanding what they were doing in his house. Shiho then proceeded to call out to him and introduce this gargantuan figure as Yuko's dad, Shiragami Genjiro. At the same time, Yuko emerged from her room, awakened by the commotion from outside. She was surprised at the sight of her friends, and more surprised when they announced that they were here to rescue her. They threw garlic bombs at her gigantic father and made a run for it. The situation wasn't as grave as they thought it was, however, as when they were running for it, Yuko asked what they were rescuing her from. The group had thought she had been forcefully taken back home, but in fact, Yuko had only been sent home to take care of her sick mother. A wave of relief washed over Asahi's face as he exclaimed that he thought her father found out that there were people that knew she was a vampire. This moment of relief was brief, however, as Yuko's father was apparently listening to their conversation, thereby making him aware his daughter's secret was out. Now they truly needed to rescue Yuko, so they made their escape again, but the group got separated and Asahi and Yuko hid in the latter's room, as a certain enchantment prevented her father from entering her room without permission. The moment of clarity allowed the two some time to get some things off their chests and mend their relationship to what it was again. Genjiro didn't stop his rampage though, and only when his sick wife got up to check the ruckus did he stop causing a scene. With that out of the way, the group decided on a plan to allow Yuko to keep going to school. They met with her father and using Aizawa's memory eraser, which again is just a hammer, made a deal that Asahi would voluntarily get his memories wiped in order to protect Yuko's secret. Genjiro saw a little bit of him and his wife in Yuko and Asahi, but still bade that he should remove any memory concerning his daughter. For the safety of the girl he likes, Asahi accepted without skipping a beat. Yuko stopped this before it could happen though, tackling Asahi while sending the hammer flying overhead. She professed that she doesn't want to lose Asahi, and that he shouldn't try too hard to protect her and her secrets to the point where they wouldn't be able to see each other again. This would have all been well and good for her father to witness, but Genjiro was sprawled on the floor. Apparently, the hammer had flown hard and high enough to hit him straight in the forehead, thus ending the very eventful evening. The next morning, as the group was preparing to leave in the car that Akari-sensei made Akane buy with her own money, everything seemed to have been settled. Genjiro waved at his daughter as they left, indicating no hard feelings from the night before. While in the car, Asahi promised to never allow his memories of them to get erased again, and that he will definitely and wholeheartedly keep Yuko's secret to the best of his ability. The two share a smile, along with a promise to keep their story going. And so ends this awesome anime series. If you'd like more anime series recaps like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you, and until next time, guys.